My name is Margaret Hayes, and at 72 years old, I thought I'd seen everything life had to offer. But sometimes, the universe has one more surprise waiting for you. It happened on a cold November evening. My daughter Bethany stood at my door, her eyes red from crying, 2 suitcases at her feet. Behind her stood my 3 grandchildren, Emma, Jacob, and little Sophia, looking confused and frightened. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Derek said he doesn't want extra mouths to feed." Those words cut through me like a knife. You see, Bethany had married Derek Thompson 15 years ago. He was charming at first, the kind of man who knew exactly what to say. But over the years, I'd watched him change. The warmth in his eyes grew cold. The kindness disappeared. And now this. "Come inside, sweetheart," I said softly, pulling her into my arms. "You're home now." The children filed past me quietly, and I saw the shame in Bethany's face. She'd always been proud, my daughter. Independent, strong. Having to come back to her mother's house felt like failure to her. But to me, it felt like a second chance. Over the next few days, I learned the full story. Derek had been having an affair with a colleague. When Bethany discovered it, he blamed her, said she'd let herself go after the children, that she was boring, uninteresting. He wanted his freedom, he said, and he didn't want the financial burden of a family anymore. I held my daughter as she cried. I helped the children with their homework. I made warm meals and tried to create a sense of safety in my small home. But something else was stirring inside me, something I hadn't felt in years, a quiet, calculated anger. You don't get to be my age without learning a few things about people, about systems, about how the world really works. And I knew something that Derek didn't know. I knew exactly where he was vulnerable. Derek and Bethany had been renting a modest apartment in the Riverside district, a 3-bedroom place in an older building. The rent was reasonable, which was why they'd stayed there for 10 years. The landlord, Mr. Patterson, was an elderly gentleman who'd owned the building for decades. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after Bethany moved in with me, I was having tea at the community center when I overheard something interesting. Mrs. Chen, who volunteered at the senior center with me, mentioned that Mr. Patterson had passed away the previous month. "His family is selling the building," she said sadly. End of an era. I went home that evening and thought about it. I thought about Derek, living comfortably in that apartment with his new girlfriend. I thought about Bethany, sleeping on my pull-out sofa, trying to rebuild her life. I thought about those 3 precious grandchildren who deserved better, and I made a decision. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, a sharp young woman named Rachel who'd been helping me manage my late husband's life insurance policy and our modest investments. I'd been careful with money my whole life. Gerald and I had lived simply, saved quietly, and when he passed 5 years ago, he left me more secure than I'd ever imagined. "Rachel," I said calmly, "I want to make a significant purchase. I need your help structuring it properly." 2 months later, I became the owner of a 6-unit apartment building in the Riverside district. Derek had no idea. The property management company I hired sent out standard letters to all tenants, informing them of the ownership change. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just business. Then I waited. I waited 3 months, watching and learning. I visited the building occasionally, getting to know the other tenants. There was Mrs. Rodriguez, a widow with 2 cats. The Johnsons, a young couple expecting their first baby. Mr. Lee, a retired teacher. And in Unit 4B, Derek Thompson and his girlfriend, Vanessa. The other tenants were kind people. Quiet, respectful. They paid their rent on time, kept their apartments clean, followed the rules. Derek and Vanessa were different. The complaints started coming through the property manager. Loud parties on weeknights, music blasting until 2 in the morning, empty bottles in the hallway. Other tenants felt uncomfortable, disturbed, unable to sleep. I documented everything carefully. Then, one spring evening, I made my move. I had my lawyer draft a formal notice. The rent for Unit 4B would be increasing not by a small amount, but by 3 times the current rate. It was legal. The lease was month to month now, and the market rates in the area had genuinely risen. I was simply bringing the unit in line with fair market value. Derek called the property management company immediately, furious. They calmly explained the situation. He could accept the new rate, or he could move out. His choice. He chose to fight it. That was his second mistake. His first was abandoning his family. My lawyer presented the documented noise complaints, the lease violations, the disturbances to other tenants. Derek had no defense. The law was on my side. He had 30 days to vacate. I didn't tell Bethany what I'd done. Not at first. She was busy rebuilding. She'd found a job at the library, something that gave her joy. The children were thriving in their new school. Emma was painting again. Jacob had joined the chess club. Little Sophia smiled more each day. They were healing. 3 weeks later, Bethany came home from work looking troubled. "Mom," she said, setting down her bag, "I ran into Derek's mother at the grocery store. She said Derek and Vanessa are scrambling to find a new place. Their landlord is evicting them or something, tripling the rent." I continued stirring my tea, my face neutral. "That's unfortunate," I said quietly. Bethany looked at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, understanding dawned in her eyes. "Mom, you didn't." I met her gaze steadily. "I protected my family," I said simply. "That building needed proper management. Those tenants deserved peace. And Derek needed to learn that actions have consequences." Bethany's eyes filled with tears, but this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were something else. Relief, perhaps. Justice. Maybe even a little pride. "What about forgiveness?" she asked softly. "Isn't that what you always taught me?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to continue hurting you," said gently. "It means releasing the anger so it doesn't poison your heart." "I'm not angry anymore, sweetheart. I'm just making sure the scales balance." Derek and Vanessa moved out right on schedule. I heard through the community grapevine that they'd had to separate. Neither could afford a decent place alone, and their relationship crumbled under the financial pressure. Derek ended up in a cramped studio on the other side of town. Vanessa moved back in with her parents. Meanwhile, I renovated Unit 4B and rented it to the Johnsons at a fair rate when they needed more space for their new baby. The building became peaceful again. The tenants became a small community, looking out for each other. Mrs. Rodriguez baked cookies for the Johnson baby. Mr. Lee tutored Emma in mathematics. It was exactly what a home should be. 6 months later, Derek reached out to Bethany. He wanted to see the children, he said. He'd been doing a lot of thinking. He was sorry. Bethany asked me what she should do. "That's your decision," I told her. "Those are your children, your boundaries to set. Whatever you choose, I'll support you." She decided to allow supervised visits. Slowly, carefully. The children deserved to know their father, even if he'd made terrible mistakes. I respected that. It showed the strength and grace I'd always known my daughter possessed. As for me, I continue managing the building. The rental income provides security for my grandchildren's education fund. The other units help pay for scholarships I've established at the local community college specifically for single mothers returning to school. Gerald would have liked that. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my porch and think about how things unfolded, about the strange paths life takes us down, about how the universe has its own sense of timing and justice. I don't believe in revenge, not really. Revenge is hot and angry, driven by pain. What I believe in is accountability, consequences, the natural order of things finding its balance. And sometimes, just sometimes, we get to be the instruments of that balance. My name is Margaret Hayes. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a landlord, and a woman who learned that protecting the people you love isn't about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes, it's about patience, wisdom, and knowing exactly when to make your move. And sometimes, the sweetest justice is served quietly, with a cup of tea and a well-written lease agreement.